Next for me means not kind of resting on anything you've done. I think a lot of times as comedians, it's hard to like originally go on stage for the first time and start writing some jokes and building an act that works. And then once you do that, sometimes comedians will sit back and go, all right, I did it. I did the thing that I said I was going to do. And it's like, and now you have to go do it again. And it never ends. The process just goes on and on and on. And it's like, you do a joke and it works. Good. Now we're on to the next joke. Oh, that joke worked. Great. Now we're going to work. The show was awesome. Excellent. Now we go on to the next show. Like everything you've done in your past doesn't mean anything. And I always think about that about comedians have a video that goes viral, for example, or they get on a TV show or whatever. And you kind of think like, oh, that's it. I'm where I'm supposed to be. This is it. I can kind of sit back. It's like, no, the work never stops.
Hey, Trent.
Hey, what's up?
Not much, man. Thanks for making the time.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate the chance to be on and chat with you.
Nice. I'm slowly trying to build up like a I don't know, encyclopedia of Canadian entertainers. It feels like I had Ron James on recently too, and I was just like, oh, this is I feel like I've got some steam rolling now. Some great guests like yourself.
Oh, thanks so much. It's nice too when it's like everyone's got so many different experiences and comes from different eras too, kind of thing, So it's always nice to pick everyone's brain and see if there's any threads going through all of it, It's always cool.
Yeah. Just check in with the Canadian comedy community, no matter what class you're in, or
what I find amazing is that it all tends to be roughly the same. Like the era could be different, but you're like, shit gigs are shit gigs, and crazy road travel is crazy road travel. You know what I mean? That's like,
yeah. That's a fun way to start the podcast. Is there any shit gigs that are memorable for you? I have a couple bombs that will stick with me. Not even there's a difference between like a shit gig and like a bomb for sure. But I definitely have some that were shit gigs and a bomb all wrapped into one.
Of course, we all do. It's like, what I always find amazing about comedians is like, you've had this, I'm sure, where you walk into an environment, a club, a bar, whatever, and your instinct goes, this is shit. This is going to be shit. There's TVs on. There's like, is that the hockey game's going to stay on during the game? During my game. Oh, that's correct. There's VLTs behind me, actually, while I'm, and you're aware of it. And the average person would walk in and go like, yeah, this is going to be tough. But a comedian's feet move you towards the stage anyway. Do you know what I mean? Rather than go pull the chute and go, this is all shit. I'm out of here. We go, this is going to suck. And here I go. Well, you just grab the mic and just try.
Because we're insane.
Exactly. It's like, what am I doing? And you know what you're doing. It's like walking into a burning house. You're like, I'm not going to make it out of here. Like, this is the stupidest thing. Anyway, time to head into this 3-story home and figure it out.
Yeah. What's your worst gig that you can remember?
God, dude. So many like I said, those rough bar gigs you do, especially earlier in your career. The corporate gig where it's like a 12 o'clock nooner with round banquet tables and
dead sober,
middle of the day. They don't want to sit and listen to yet another human being talk at them for an hour. And the comedian's going to close out our event with some entertainment. And they're like on their phones the whole time. Like half of them are not even facing you. Like they're back on because of the rounded table. So they're just doing one of these. Okay, this guy's still up there. And they don't want to be there. And they don't want to be there. And then you don't want to be there. So those are classic. But I had to do a housewarming once. And I get to the guy tells me it's going to be a surprise. No one knows you're coming.
Was it like a friend that was like, can you do this housewarming?
No, my agent at the time was like, hey, this guy's having a housewarming and he'd like to have a comedian come to his house. And, like again, as I said to you earlier, knowing it's going to be shit and being like, I'm available. Yeah, no, totally. I can go.
Yeah.
So the guy texts me like day of and he's like, by the way, it's going to be a surprise. So I'm like 3 years into stand up, like, like no one knows who I am. Like
now, if your agent now called you and said that, you're like, you're fired. What?
Like, why do you even? Do you know who I am as a person? Why would you even offer this?
Yeah.
So I pull up to this house. He goes, go to the back door. So I go to the back door. He lets me in. He goes, He goes, all right, man. He goes, hide in, I'm going to put you in the bathroom here, and you just hide in the bathroom, and I'll come down and get you. As I'm saying this, I'm reliving the insanity with
yeah.
And he's like, yeah, just totally just sit here and I'll come in and get you. So 20 minutes later, he goes, hey, I'm ready. Let's bring you down to the kitchen. So I go down to the kitchen area there, and I walk out of the hallway into this room, and it's just a bunch of people sitting around the island, drinking wine, eating cheese, and they turn and look, and they're just like, who?
A housewarming.
Yeah, like a regular housewarming, and they're like, who the? And in that moment, I realized, like, oh, they're like thinking to themselves, like, how long has that guy been in the bathroom? Like, who is that?
Yeah.
And why is he now just walking out into this living room? That's what it hit me. And I was like, oh God, this was a terrible idea. And I'm doing, at the time I had 20 minutes total if it was going well.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're not getting many applause breaks from 4 people sitting around an island in a kitchen. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not oh yeah, like that was amazing. Oh dude, worst night of my life. It was terrible. Terrible. Yeah.
That's fun though. No comedy show is ever great when it starts with a surprise.
No, surprise comedy is not a good idea. It's like
It's
like at those pubs, right? Where people are like if you and I were good friends and we hadn't seen each other in a while, and we're like, hey man, let's go to the pub tonight, grab a couple beers, get some wings, and we'll catch up. Then we get there and they go, everyone shut up. 3 strangers you've never heard of before are going to tell you stories. You're like,
Kyle Lucy told me this, and I'm sorry to anyone who's listening who's already heard it, but I love this story so much. I tell it all the time, that like he was doing like a bar gig somewhere in the Durham region area at a restaurant. And he said, like, the second, I think he was hosting it or something, because he went on stage first. And the second that he went on stage and like grabbed the mic, and he was like, all right, guys, we're going to start up this comedy show in about 5 minutes. This lady in front of him was just cutting into her steak that just arrived at the table. And she dropped her knife and fork and was like, oh, Christ.
You just ruined my night.
Like, what the
Christ.
I just got this steak.
You gotta be shitting me.
And now this is starting? Like, it was just the audible, like, the drama of it all. Like, she couldn't believe that these people were about to do comedy in front of her. And she just happened to be right front row. She did not want to be there at all. Like,
can I get a to-go box? Can I get it to go, Bob? This is, I can't be here for this. This is not what I signed on for. No, it's terrible, but the organizers don't know that quite often. That's what I find amazing. Like, comedians, we understand how fragile that environment is to do stand-up. You got to be seen, you got to be heard. It has to be expected. And often organizers like are just like, no, we're just going to spring it on people, and I love comedy and they're going to love you. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, this is going to be a bloodbath.
Even other people who enjoy comedy, it doesn't necessarily mean that they enjoy the same comedy. That's kind of the beauty of comedy, is that like there's so many different ways to make someone laugh that people have taste now. Like, it's actually like they have a genre that they like. Yeah. And it's like that's such an insane premise to I like comedy, so everyone else is definitely going to enjoy this.
And surprise comedy in particular, like if you went to a movie, you're like, I'm going to go watch a movie, and then suddenly, while you're trying to watch a movie, someone's trying to do stand-up comedy in front of the screen. You're like, I didn't come to watch comedy, I came to watch the movie. It's the same thing. It's like, people have to know there's going to be a comedy show. Are you here for the show? Like, just kind of preparing them for what's about to happen. So I'm always amazed when those things are done, but Lord knows they will continue, and the next era of comics will also suffer the same fate. So
it's like hazing, and they need to go through it a little bit, I guess.
And it gets better.
Your word for the episode was next. So why did that word come to mind for you?
Next for me means not kind of resting on anything you've done. I think a lot of times as comedians, it's hard to like originally go on stage for the first time and start writing some jokes and building an act that works. And then once you do that, sometimes comedians will sit back and go, all right, I did it. I did the thing that I said I was going to do. And it's like, and now you have to go do it again. And it never ends. The process just goes on and on and on. And it's like, you do a joke and it works. Good. Now we're on to the next joke. Oh, that joke worked. Great. Now we're going to work. The show was awesome. Excellent. Now we go on to the next show. Like, everything you've done in your past doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think about that, about comedians have a video that goes viral, for example, or they get on a TV show or whatever. And you kind of think like, oh, that's it. I'm where I'm supposed to be. This is it. I can kind of sit back. It's like, no, the work never stops.
But especially when you go viral, that's when you really have to, like, I had Jake Hirsch on, and his word for the episode was heat. Because he's like, when somebody gets heat behind them, like their video goes viral, that's when you have to like double down on everything. Like you have to really like push as much as you can to get the most out of that attention.
Yeah. And the work never changes. It's like, write more jokes, be a better comedian, whether you had a good show, a bad show, a good month, a bad month, it doesn't matter. The work is the same every single day. And so next to me is really important, because I think it's my own little mantra to myself to go like, all right, that was good and that worked well. It's like, but now we go on to the next thing. And so it kind of just keeps my feet on the ground to just do the work, keep doing the work, you know? So I keep preaching that to myself more than anything.
Yeah, I think it's good sometimes to take your own advice. That's what I always say. I'm like, I give advice to so many people, and then I'm like, you know what? I should start listening to myself.
Yeah, I've got some good advice. I should take some of this from time to time.
It's so much easier though to like be looking at someone else's life and be like, oh, well, why don't you just do X, Y, and Z? And they go, oh, I didn't think of that. And then you're like, oh, maybe that also applies to myself. It's just easier because being a comedian, you are your own boss, you know, regardless of having an agent or working for somebody. Like you work for CBC, and this hour has 22 minutes. And like, yes, you have a boss, but when it comes to comedy, which I'm sure the stand-up portion is what you're actually the most passionate about, everything else is kind of just cherry on top of getting to do stand-up. Am I right in that assumption?
Yeah. No, stand-up's my one true love. Yeah, for sure. In terms of performing, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I love, obviously 22 is great, but it's a different machine, right? You're part of a bigger machine. Where stand-up is that solitary stand, deliver your thoughts, your performance, registers with an audience. Boom. Right away, you know.
But it's easier almost in a job like this hour has 22 minutes, where they're like, okay, guys, season's done. You did it.
Yeah.
We're gonna wrap up. We're gonna take off X amount of time, and then we're gonna come back and start writing the next thing, and then it's on from there. But when it comes to stand-up, like you said, it's never ending. Do you have a way that you balance that? Like, because I don't know about you, if I'm like relaxing for more than like 5 minutes, I get like this anxiety of like, I should be working. Like I should be behind that desk writing another joke, or at a show doing another show. And it's hard for me to like relax. And I'm sure many comedians have that same thing, or, you know, just entrepreneurs in general, right? Like if you're trying to grow a business, it's weird. You have to find balance in order for the business to succeed. But you feel like when you're not working actively on it, it's falling behind.
Right. Yeah. It's a unique situation for me because 22 minutes is so all encompassing. So you kind of start end of August and you don't wrap up until beginning of April. So that takes up so much of your creative energy and your time and your resources. So I don't focus too much on stand-up during that time, although I will do guest spots around to kind of just keep the tools sharp, you know?
Yeah.
And then once we wrap, I take a couple of weeks and just kind of like just reset and rest. And then I'm into full stand-up mode. So it's like writing a lot, trying to get guest spots. I'll do my own shows. Because what I realized, especially with people who get on a TV show, comedians, you can get really soft because you have some money coming in. You don't need to hustle and chase like you used to. You're tired after a 12-hour day of filming. Do you want to go sit in a comedy club now for 2 hours and wait for your spot? Like there's all these excuses and reasons why you wouldn't continue to do stand-up, you know, at that level. Yeah. I remember watching certain comedians who were on a popular sitcom or whatever, and then I would watch them live doing stand-up, and I was like, wow, they were like so much better a few years ago. And it's because they're not putting in the same reps and the same amount of time and attention to detail that they did when they didn't have the TV show. So I watched that from a distance, and I was like, I don't want to fall into that trap. So I kind of treat it like seasons now. Like there's TV season, and there's kind of stand-up season. And sometimes they overlap. Like I'll do stand-up shows on the weekend or tour shows on the weekend, but stay close to Halifax and whatnot. But yeah, I always was fearful of like, oh, it can go away. Let that stand-up muscle can atrophy and weaken if you don't continue to lift comedically, you know?
Yeah. It's very much like exercising, like it's working that muscle of something that like regular people don't necessarily need to do every day, is be always thinking 3 steps ahead. I find that that's what stand-up makes your brain really good at doing, is like predicting moments, and then also at the same time how you're going to act and what you're going to say in those moments as well, which ultimately I think that you can actually find like confidence in just communication. Like you actually, stand-ups will speak more confidently when they communicate, because when they're off stage, it's like they're not needing to, okay, what's the next joke I'm setting up? Okay, what's happening in the room? Being like super hyper aware of that. That aside though, like, do you find it difficult to balance like stand up and family, or do you think like segmenting these things, like you had a season of this hour is 22 minutes, and then you have a season of stand up that helps you focus better?
Yeah, it's easy for my fiance, I think, now, because we do plan things out a little bit so that I allow blocks of time where like I'm not going to take any gigs during this period of time, or we're going to do our own thing or whatever. So you try and kind of forecast that way and set it up for yourself. You know, when you first start, obviously you're saying yes to everything, right? Every gig, you're like, for sure, I can do that. I'll drive there, totally, whatever. And then you get to a point in your life where you're like, I consider mental health a big part now, and my overall health. Like, yeah, you can say yes to everything, but what are you left with at the end of the day? Like, how much of you is left for you and for your partner or for your friends, you know? And so I try and weigh all that stuff out and go, where will I be at the end of the season, for example? Like, how tired will I be? Like, I've done that before where I planned a stand-up tour at the end of a 22-minute season, and it was a big mistake because I was so tired from the filming. It's like I should have created a window of time to just rest, and then maybe did the tour started the tour a month later. The shows were great and I had a great time, but in terms of enjoyment level and stuff and really having the energy to really do what you want to do, I should have had that gap. So you get better with that over time, I think, and realizing what you can handle and what you go, okay, that's a little bit too much. So I think it's over time you get that experience and learn what works for you. And it's different for everybody, of course, right?
Yeah. Do you have a writing process? Like, you know, you like once you take those couple weeks off, which I guess is great because you found out through trial and error, you're like, okay, I need to give myself a few weeks to relax and then reset. And that makes total sense to me. When you come back from that and you're like, I'm in stand-up mode now, do you kind of pull bits like whenever they come to you, you know, write them down because there's those moments, or are you like, I have to sit down at this time and just write for the sake of writing until something formulates?
It's a multi-pronged process, I would say, for me anyway. It's like you've probably found yourself doing this, like you're walking down the street and something happens or pops in your head and you're like putting notes in your phone, like, I'm going to forget that if I don't write it down. And then I do that. I'll use voice memos, like just same thing. I'll then sit down and go, okay, let's get a piece of paper out and like try and hammer out what I think the beats would be in this. Then I might type it out just because that'll give me a different part of my brain to use. And so maybe it looks a little bit different. So I'll try and sometimes I'll just riff on it into my phone and go like, you know, let's see where that goes and what I would cut out or whatever. So to me, I like to try and make time every single day to go, hey, I need to spend some time with this material or idea and see where it goes. And you know what it's like. Sometimes you write like 3 pages and like, you know, 10 seconds of which is usable and actually good. But you needed to write those 3 pages to get that 10 seconds, right? It's like I heard Ed Sheeran talk about songwriting that way, that it's like digging a well. It's like you're just pulling up mud and garbage and shit. And it's like, just what am I doing? Whatever. And all of a sudden you get some good water down at the bottom. But you don't get to the good water unless you're willing to do all that digging to get rid of all that other stuff. So I kind of treat it like that if I spend some time today, I could find something. But if I don't spend any time today, then I don't find anything. Like fishing, I guess. If you don't go to the lake and fish, you ain't getting a fish. So go put your hook in the water and see what happens.
Yeah. Do you have any other like hobbies outside of like stand up or like, you know, doing this hour 22 minutes that kind of keep you? Because I heard who was it that I was talking to? Graham K was telling me that Nate Bargatze really loves golfing because he's like, man, it's the 1 hour of the day that I don't have to think about jokes. Like,
exactly. Turn your brain off.
Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, I'm a big sports fan, so I love watching soccer. I like going to games. I go to Calgary FC games out here in Calgary. I go to the gym. Like I'll watch documentaries. Like I think it's so important for comedians and just people in general, I guess, to have a life outside of your job, have a life of, but for comedians in particular, it's you need experiences, right? That's how you build an act for most people. So even though you try and turn that part of your brain off, it's always kind of working in the background, right? It's always kind of just taking in data.
Yeah.
And but you still need that relaxation time of like, yeah, man, I'm just going to go to the mountains, for example, for a couple of days and just chill out. And it's weird. It clears your brain out a little bit, and sometimes it's when your best ideas come. But I don't go into work mode per se. It's just like live some life, have a good time, enjoy the company you're with, spend some time by yourself too. Is really good. And yeah, I think you need that well-roundedness to be a healthy person, but also to be a good artist, I think.
Yeah. Now, what was what I'm curious about too is when you like learned that you were going to be on this hour is 22 minutes. What was that like booking process like? Because that's a sick gig to book, and I'm sure you worked your ass off to get it. But like, what did that feel like for you, and what was the preparation leading up to it, and maybe even like what was your first day of filming like for you?
Yeah, so I'd gone to 22 minutes for a couple different stints as a writer for a bunch of weeks, and was on camera a little bit, like doing streeters where I'm out talking to people and whatever. And I had a sketch or whatever that I wrote that we did live, like during the taping or whatever. So I kind of knew how the sausage was made a little bit. And I thought maybe I might get a job coming back as a writer. Like I had a decent stint while I was there. And I was like, oh, maybe over the summer I'll get an offer for that. And then my agent calls and goes, yeah, they want you to join the cast. And I was like, can you send that in an email? Because I want to read that on paper. Like I just
hang that up on the wall.
Yeah, yeah. Because I'm a Newfoundlander, right? So like, I mean, I grew up watching 22 Minutes, and like it was just such an iconic show for me because you didn't see Newfoundlanders on TV very often. You know, it was a big deal. Like these people are like from where I'm from, and they're on television. Like that's a big deal to me. So I grew up with the show on a pedestal, you know. And so then to join the show was just like surreal. So then it's like I always say it's like being drafted in the NHL. Like it's great. You get drafted during the summer months. You're like, yeah, and it's like parties and everyone's like, oh man, congrats. Yeah. But then there's the first day of training camp. Like you have to show up now and be like, okay, all the hoopla and all that shit's over. Now it's like, all right, now we got to go to work.
Where are the jokes? So,
yeah. Like let's go. So you show up and it's like, you know, things are moving a million miles an hour. And the thing about 22 Minutes and some of the advice I got when I first joined the cast was like, kind of further to what we talked about with stand-up, it's like next, like you had a good week, you had a bad week, it doesn't matter. We're on to the next week. Like there's no time for patting yourself on the back or lamenting a week where you felt like it didn't go well. It's like, we don't have any time. Like we're already on to the next thing. Like by the time the audience watches the show on Tuesday nights, we've already started writing the next episode. It's already started. It's already going. So there's not much time to sit back and lick your wounds or celebrate and think you're the shit. It's like, no one cares. We're on to the next thing. So that speed of pace. And again, that whole, just the energy it takes to do that. Like sometimes you'll do 3 sketches in a day, for example. So that's 3 different sets of lines you have to learn, 3 different looks, makeup, prosthetics, probably wigs, whatever, on location, different locations, all in one day. Then that day's done. Then the next day, we're going to do it again in 3 different places, 3 different sketches, 3 different characters.
Wow.
So you do that for 24 weeks, right? You're like, at the end of it, like, ooh, like I'm good, you know? It takes time to build up that stamina, I think, of, okay, here's how it works. And then after you get your first season under your belt, you're kind of like, okay, I got the lay of the land here a little bit. So it's definitely a learning process for sure. Cause no other show is like it. Like it's not like you're playing the same character on a sitcom where you show up and like, yeah, I do this guy and this is all I do every day.
Yeah.
You could be a general from the 1800s in one sketch. The next sketch, you're a doctor in 2024. And the next one, you're, you know, like, who knows, right? So it's that flexibility. And as I said, you get used to it the more you do it.
So that first day, then you were just like pretty nervous the whole time.
Oh,
just like,
of course. Because there's a pressure too, right? Like if you're a writer or you're one of my castmates and you wrote this sketch, like I want to do it justice, right? Like this is your work. And now,
team effort.
Yeah. And so you want it to go well because you wrote it and you want it to make the show. And if I go out and pick whatever I pick to do as a character or whatever choice I make in the moment, and it doesn't go well, then you feel bad. Like you want it to do well. So you feel this pressure ultimately, even at table read, like you're seeing these sketches for the first time at the table read. And you're like, if I botch a word here, that could be the difference in this sketch, making it or not making it. So there's that pressure. I felt more pressure at table reads than I do actually doing the sketches themselves. Cause table reads, like You're
It's the
seeing
first go at it. Yeah, yeah.
You're sitting around a table. It's all the cast, all the crew. And it's like, okay, let's see if there's any juice in these 25, 26 sketches we're going to read. Right. So, so there's all those different things where you're like, okay, like,
was there anything that got like a big pop, like at the table read, where then you went to film it and it just didn't work?
Yeah, sometimes it's like comedians, like, you know what it's like, man, you're hanging out with comedians and you're in the back of the room or you're in a car or whatever, and you're busting, you're cracking up laughing about something stupid.
Yeah.
But is it only funny to us in this car right now?
Yeah.
Or if you take it on stage later tonight, will it translate to a bunch of strangers at 8:00 who don't know any of us, you know? Yeah. And sometimes sketches are like that. Like we get it and we're like, yeah, that's our world. But will it appeal to someone who's 65 living in Saskatoon? I don't know.
Yeah, true.
So that's why playing the sketches back in front of the live audience on Monday nights is so important, because it kind of gives us a cross section of demographics and people to go, okay, let's see if this works for people. So there's lots of sketches people never see. With
social media now too, you can almost get that like instant, like here's the feedback in writing of what people think about it. Like it's a little bit more, obviously there's like who comments on videos, first of all. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's a special type of person that's like leaving comments on something. I don't have the time. Maybe if something makes me laugh, I'll try to write something funny, but just to attract them to my comedy page, you know, it's almost like advertising in that way. But regular people who are just leaving comments telling you like, well, more Trudeau propaganda, I see.
Hilarious. Hilarious. It's so funny.
It's like you guys make fun of everyone. That's the whole show, is like mocking politics.
The best part of it for me, what I find interesting, like I don't go into the comments too often because like it's like you're gonna find something you don't want to find at some point, you know, even if everyone loves it. But the thing I find funny about it is, like Bill Burr said this about stand-up, like when you say something on stage as a comedian, you have to accept that it's no longer yours now, that other humans are going to hear it. They're going to cut it with their childhood, their politics, their life experience, their trauma, and they're going to hear what they want to hear from what you just said. And I think the sketches are the same way. So sometimes when you go out to the comments, like the stuff people will think it's about, or what they're really saying, it's like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. It's about muffins. Yeah. It's about muffins at Tim Hortons. There's no deeper meaning. There's no like,
the top is Ontario and the bottom is Quebec. They don't want to tell you.
I get what they're saying now. I know it's
separationist.
I notice how he paid with tap. You think I don't know what that means? Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
They want a cashless society.
It's like just so loaded. And I'm like, this tells way more about you commenting than it does about us.
Well, I think like COVID, like his comments were like, I was on like a YouTube channel like pre-COVID that had like a lot of dedicated people that would leave lots of comments, and it would reach like general audiences of people who weren't even subscribed to the channel but were leaving comments. And there's always like bad comments, whatever. But I feel like COVID made everyone like a conspiracy theorist. Like everyone I talk to has like a conspiracy theory about something. And it'll come up at one point or another. Like I just find it all absolutely hilarious. But
like, I know the phrase you always hear before a conspiracy theory drops is you know why they do that, right? That's what they always say. Like, oh, you got the headphones on there? Yeah. You know why they're black, right? You're like, oh God, no, he's gonna give me conspiracy theory. It's like, you know why they're 2 ears, right? You know why they're over your ears.
Or they'll say like some obscure, like, you ever hear about Project Gobbledygook?
Look it up. Dude, when you get home,
do the research.
Google it, dude. Do your research.
Do the research.
I'm just saying, I'll leave it there. Just do your research. Like, okay.
They mean type what I said into Google and go to page 9 until you find like a Reddit blog of some guy.
The cool thing though for our show, I got to say, is that over the last, I'd say, a year or two in particular, like people who come up to you, like wherever, right out in the world, will say like, oh, thanks for what you do. Like, because I think when COVID was happening and the world was upside down and whatever, we were still doing shows. So I think people who like the show were like, well, at least this one thing is still there. There's some, and we were still commenting on everything that was happening, and COVID was part of that, of course. But
Yeah.
I realized that people needed that anchor. They needed to know that when I turn the TV on, there's going to be something that's somewhat lighthearted and there's some levity, and that it's on the same time it's always been. And I think people saw it as a little bit of a security blanket in a really crazy, crazy time. So it was cool because we would get compliments before, but these are different. They're more like, thank you, which I thought was really interesting.
Well, what I find interesting and like why I think this show has been successful for so long is that like if you watch, there's just something about Canadian television. It's mostly reality TV. There's like an awkwardness to it. They're like, we're still trying to be America light a little bit,
Right.
We're trying to be like a liberal America, like just a little bit.
Yeah.
And like there's just this awkwardness where I think we just haven't had longevity on television. But this hour has 22 minutes. It's great. It's like you are taking the news, which is boring as all hell to listen to, and you're making it funny, which is entertainment. And so even if you're not like explaining the full point in the joke, it's impactful enough for someone where it hits them where they go, oh, that was so funny. I should probably look into that though. Like, it still sparks that, which is my favorite type of humor, something that has like layers to it where you're like, oh yeah, that is a bad societal thing that we got going on. Like, it's funny, but it's funny because it's true. And I think, do you think that's kind of why it's been on for so long and why it's been so popular?
Yeah, I think it's always been forced to evolve, right? Like politics changes, the world changes, and the show changes with it. The comedy, the topics we're talking about, some of them are, housing prices and food prices. Like these things have always been in our world. But the slices of life stuff, right? Like how it's self-checkout now. And you're like, oh, do you have the same problems with self-checkout that I do? And then you watch a sketch, you're like, see, they did. That's what I was telling Helen yesterday. And so you'll see comments sometimes we're going like, they tag people in it. Or it's like, this is you. This is you. You do this all the time.
Because you can send someone a physical representation of your frustration.
Yes.
You're like, this is what I'm talking about.
This is exactly it. And that's the beautiful thing about comedy in general, right? Like sketch or stand-up is that there's a truth in it, and people don't feel alone. They don't feel alone when they see their situation, someone else portraying it. They go like, I'm not crazy. Like I also had that thought, or I also did that thing. And you feel a sense of community with that, right? And so I think that's why people just go, oh yeah, this feels good. This just feels, I'm not crazy at all. This is my life,
One tagline, and I say it every time I'm at the grocery store now, is Stacy, when she was like getting her items scanned and he's like, stay with me, ma'am. And Chris is scanning them through and he scans the Balderson cheese and she's like, oh, why do we have to be a Balderson household? Every time my girlfriend goes to grab that cheese, I'm like, oh, why do we have to be a Balderson?
Is there any knockoff? Please find a knockoff. Yeah, it's like these real things.
Do you think, like, speaking on as exciting as the topic is, it's on my mind currently. Do you think like we'll see prices come back down, or is it just going to stay where it is? Like,
I don't know, man. I just put gas in my vehicle last week and I was like, maybe I need a bicycle.
Yeah, I'm like $1.63. What the
dear God? It's
for
like
regular.
What are we doing? Where is it going? You ever try and buy almonds at a store? Like you're like, is there 12 almonds in this container?
It should be behind the counter. They're so expensive.
It should be like
a guy has to unlock them, and which they're doing now. Like I walked out of Walmart and the alarm started going off, and I'm like, I paid for everything. Like when the guy comes over and he goes, do you have meat in your bag? And I was like, yeah. He goes, oh yeah, we put like a little security strip on the meat, so it probably didn't. I'm like, why are we security tagging meat?
Wow.
Like, what?
Is that good for the meat? Was that good for the meat? Am I gonna be okay?
I think this cow feels very secure.
Yeah, I'm not lifting meat here, bud. This is I got the receipt and we're good to go. I don't know, dude. It's a scary time for everybody. The other thing I'm amazed by is what people think is a lot of money for one thing is not a lot of money for something else, Like $20 is not just $20. $20 for one thing is like, that's quite affordable. $20 or something else, you're like, that's insane. Like where we all decide where money is, like that's good. That's a good price. It's like, is it? Because almonds, there's 12 almonds and they're $37. Is that good for you? Or people are like, well, I like almonds. I mean, what do you want from me?
Yeah. But then somebody else you'll know would be like, okay, I'm figuring out how we can get an almond tree in the backyard.
Yeah. Like, I've been Googling almonds, trees, and I think it's doable.
$20,000.
Yeah. I'm going to get the whole neighborhood to go in on it. It should produce enough nuts for, it's like, oh God, Greg, please.
But then we'll have to charge $20 a bag to make back our neutral festival. You're like, okay, you see why it costs so much
I'm just going to go to the grocery store. It's just easier, So it's one of those things.
That's the problem too, is everything has been made more convenient. So, and the convenient thing always costs more. You're always paying for convenience. But I feel like because of COVID, we've been conditioned to go with the more convenient route, not because it is convenient, because that's what we were used to. That's all we could do, right? Like, if you don't want to leave the house because you're scared of this new viral disease, you're going to Instacart your stuff,
right?
Like, and then when COVID's done and you can actually go to the grocery store and you don't have anything to worry about, you're still like, yeah, but I could still Instacart it.
Yeah.
No, you're paying like $30, $40 extra on top of everything.
Yeah, it's just layered. It's so layered now.
I think it'll be a while for us to shake it. Like, I don't know. I feel like, but it's the same thing with cell phones, I guess, too, right? Like, it made our lives easier, but then also there's always like a push and a pull with it all, right?
Yeah, there's a bit I'm working on now where I'm like, my iPhone is like, you need to update your phone. I'm like, this is the update. This phone is the update. I used to have a landline. This is the actual. There's a wire connected to a box on the wall. So you update it. I'm out. Like I did my part. I gave you the $1,000. You update it with your genius, whatever. And I think you're right. There's a technology tipping point where I'm like, has it made our life easier? Like we're at the other side now where, the app signs me out. Did I ask to be signed out? I didn't ask to be signed out, man. Why have I got to go back in now? Are you gonna is this easier?
Too far.
Yeah. It's like, you know what? Never signed me out. Cable. Cable never once signed me up. I left NBC on, or they were just like, you can go away for 2 weeks. You come back, dude. We're still on. We're not. We didn't assume anything about you or your safety, And I'm like, I don't know. We've reached this tipping point where it's gotten so complex and complicated. I'm like, I don't think this makes our lives easier anymore. I think it's become more of a pain in the ass.
Yeah. And the worst part is you, in some scenarios, you can't change it. And then in other scenarios, you have to kind of hit the breaking point of being like, oh, this is like too much before you actively have to pull back from using the most updated technology. Like the thing that I have the biggest gripe with is like, I love video games. Like, I've played video games forever. And I used to be able to just put the game in my N64 and it turned on and it played and that was it. There was and now I have to download a game off of an online store, so it's not even a physical copy for my PlayStation, and then it takes 2.5 hours to download the game, and I'm like, okay, 2.5 hours pass, I'm finally ready to start this game. I turn it on and it's like, requires an update. That's 45 minutes.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
I just want to play.
How is it easier? Like, it's not easier at all. We've gone the other way.
Yeah.
It's weird because almost everyone's doing it. So you almost feel like if you bow out, like, well, I'll be left behind, but I'm also how much more do I need? Like, honestly, just me as an individual, how much more technology do I need? And I'm I'm at the point now where I'm like, I think I'm good. I think this is good for me. The bus, I'm going to pull the string on the bus. I'm just going to get off here. Like, I don't need to go where this is going. So
I heard Dave Attell has like a flip phone because he just he just doesn't want to be bothered with like all the apps. Yeah. And if he like does something online, he just does it on his computer. And I'm like, that's fair.
Dude, I think about it all the time where I go, like, me and my friends back in the day when we were growing up, we're like, you called someone on the phone, you're like, on landline, you're like, dude, like, you want to go to the mall 2:00? And there's like, yeah, okay, I'll see you there too. And then like you hung up and you just met the person there at 2:00. Like by that door that you decided, the back door by the Dairy Queen. Like there was no, oh, dude, I'm running late, I'm going to text you. It's like, this is an agreement now. Like, we're locked into this. Like, you got to live up to your end of the bargain because I'm waiting at the door at 2:00. And you have to wait, like, do I wait 5 minutes? Do I wait 10 minutes if he's not here on time? Like, these are the things you're negotiating all the time. And I heard a really cool thing the other day, and I think it's really true because I found it with myself, that because we're taking in so much data all the time with our phones and social media and video games and things, we're not taking enough time to just be quiet and silent to process what we've just seen. So it's constantly filling up, filling up, filling up. Whereas before, if you were in a coffee shop and you walk in, there's a lineup, you just stood there. Like you by yourself, you just stood there waiting to be the next person in line. While you were doing that, you were thinking about a conversation you had with me earlier in the day. You were thinking about, oh man, I probably should go to the grocery store. Like you were solving problems and putting stuff together. And now we're just going to be on our phone the whole time, just taking in more data. There's a cat that's bowling. Oh my God, that guy fell off a umbrella.
And
you know
the
what I mean? So it's just
randomness of it is what's insane to me. Like you could be on Twitter and you could see a cat that's bowling, and then you could just see someone get punched in the face. Like the very next video, you're like, oh my God. Or you're on TikTok and you're like, oh, that's a cute puppy. And then just like war. You're like, oh, okay. That just ruined everything. Like
terrible. And you're like, but what the problem is, what I think about is like, what do you do with that data? Like that data goes somewhere. It's in there. How does it affect your mood? How does it affect your rest of your day now after seeing a terrible video about a dog that was, in hard shape? I'm like, I don't need to see that. I'm having a great day.
Either way, it's not good for you. You're either internalizing it and it's making you hyper emotional, which will make you make bad decisions, or you're not internalizing it and then you become desensitized to those things. And then when something scary or fucked up happens in front of you, you have no reaction to it because you've been so desensitized to just like nonsense, just constant nonsense.
Constantly. And especially in our profession as stand-ups, like I think about the concept that this still exists as a profession. The fact that there's still a job
bigger
where
than ever, I would say
that's bigger than ever, but also that in this era of constant stimulus and show me the cool thing and CGI and all that, that there's still just room for an individual standing up on a stage with a microphone and everyone else shuts up and listens to that person. It's like, that's insane that still coexists with this other fast-paced, give me more, give me more.
There's nothing the digital world will never satisfy that. You could have AI George Carlin and have him projected into a theater and it won't be as good as seeing a different comedian live in the flesh. And
there's an energy to it.
There's an energy to it. There's like this mass hypnosis that happens while you're like in a comedy club where everyone is like in your brain for that moment in time, right? Like you're explaining to them and they're just listening and they're trying to, like you said, they're problem solving in their own head of what's going to happen next. And then it's the misdirect, obviously, that gets the laugh. But it's truly magical that it's lasted this long.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Like I remember talking to comedians a bunch of years ago. It's like, you always kind of expect that. Okay, next year's the last year for it, huh? You heard? The government came out and said, all right, guys, this is not going to be a thing anymore. I know a lot of you are making a living at it, but this is ridiculous. I mean, this makes no sense. And so you kind of just go, well, we get another year doing it. Okay, cool. But it is still pretty cool that people still want that human connection and 1v1. Tell me a human experience and I'll feel connected to you and everybody else here. That's what laughter is to me. It's everyone getting that same thing at the same time. And we all go like, oh my God, like you're not alone. Like you realize in that moment, like, other people think like me or have the same problems or frustrations. So there's definitely some magic to it.
Like I love when a comedian says something just so fucked up on stage and you hear those guttural laughs, like they knew they're not supposed to laugh at that, but then it just reverberates and people are like, oh my God, like finally this release of like, I can laugh at the fucked up thing because other people are laughing at the fucked up thing.
You're not crazy at all. Like we've all had that thought. That's the best thing about being a comedian, right? Is observing something and spending more time with it than the average person does. And then when you reveal it on stage, they're like, oh my God, I was talking to my husband about that 2 days ago. And I love that stuff. It's great. It's great.
Now, a question that I always ask all my guests, and I want you to think of yourself as you at 15 years old.
Okay.
Because I want you to, the phone rings and it's you now on the other end, and you're going to give yourself a piece of advice based on what you know now. It's not going to affect your life whatsoever, but I find it's easier to give advice to yourself in those moments because you knew who you were at that age. You know what you're going through. It's easier to relate to yourself younger, I find. But what advice would you give to your younger self?
I would say to enjoy it more, to just relax. Like, you don't have to have everything figured out. I think a lot of times with kids in particular, there's a pressure to kind of have answers of like, what are you going to do after high school? And then when you graduate, if you go to university, what are you going to do after that? Like, there's always that pressure to have it figured out. And when you're young, man, that's hard. Like, you're still, I don't know, like still trying to figure out how to figure out your acne. You're like, what are you talking? I don't know what I want to do. And I think a lot of kids had that pressure. I would have had those thoughts at 15, 16, like, what am I supposed to do with my life? And you realize, like, you just follow your curiosity, just follow whatever you're curious about. And once you go down that road, you don't have to commit to it. You can change your mind and go, oh, that didn't work. It's not quite what I thought, or drop me off. That's cool. And change and go into another lane. Like, we're not locked into these things. Like, I always tell people, man, the plane flies back too, right? Like, but people act as in life as if, well, I make this decision and that's it. And it's like, no, the plane brought you there. They can take you back or take you somewhere else. And I think just that lack of worry of just, yeah, you're going to figure it out. We don't have the answers just yet, but trust that you'll have them in time when you just take that first step.
Yeah. That's so important too, because I think so many people feel like they're going to like they're going to disappoint themselves, or they're going to disappoint their family, or they're going to be viewed as a disappointment. And I find that can be so overwhelming for a kid, right? Like you're 15, 16, and you're getting told like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And it's like, I was always like, I want to do lots of things. I don't.
Yeah. Why do I have to choose now?
I couldn't. Yeah. And why do I have to choose now? I'm like, I couldn't imagine doing one thing for 60 years. Like, but I mean, like, once, realizing that I could do stand up, I was like, okay, that's the one thing that I could do forever. Like, I could be retired, but still, hitting an open mic. Like,
yeah. No, it's awesome.
Shit off my chest. Yeah.
But stand up, I don't know what it was like for you, but like when you tell people you're a stand up comedian in the beginning, especially for me, it was like, that's like telling someone you're an astronaut. Like, people are like, what are you talking about?
They go,
like,
whoa, how do you do it?
But what do you do for a living? It's like, I do stand up comedy. Like, no. But like, how do you pay the bill? I'm like, I just told you, like, because they've never met someone who does this. So, and I think when you first start, like, people are looking for those little signposts along the way that this is working out for you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you're on that show, or you got that festival. Like, okay, you really are doing this thing, because they can't even process that a human being would choose to do this for a living. So that's why I always tell comedians too, it's hard sometimes when you talk to people who are out in the real world, as I call it, because they're just like, I don't know.
I call them normies.
Yeah. Normies. They're like, no, you go 9 to 5, you get a pension, you hate your job. I mean, you can't stand it, but you go in there every day.
And then with inflation, your pension's worth nothing when you retire.
There's nothing left when you retire, and you lament your life. I mean, that's what we're all doing. I mean, what are we?
That's so great. Doing? There was an AI like thumbs up that
I saw
on
that.
The screen when that was interesting. I'd never seen that before.
I don't know either. I was like, did I give myself a thumbs up? Did someone enjoy that thought process so much?
Yeah, it's too far. The FBI is listening, so that's
totally. So that's why being with comedians, at least we validate each other. Like, we're not nuts, right? Like, this is a normal life you could have. So it's important to have that community.
You have to, if you are pursuing, if anyone's listening to this that is a stand-up comedian or is an actor or is trying to do something like that, you have to have your own benchmarks of what success is. And it can't be an industry standard, right? Like, it can't be, or a normie standard of what success is. Like, oh, you own a big house and you have lots of money, that's success. No, it's not success, because we know there are people who got all of the things that were perceived as success and were miserable. I.e. Robin Williams, like, he had perceivably everything, seemed very successful, seemed happy, but wasn't. So it's like, for me, I always viewed like this podcast, I was like, when I can monetize my YouTube channel and have like 50,000 downloads a month, my podcast will be successful, because then I know that there's lots of people listening, and that's successful to me. But then I had fucking Barry Katz on the podcast.
Yep.
Who's I couldn't even believe that he responded to my request to be on the show. Like, I was like, what the hell? Yeah. And then I told him that I had done 2 other podcasts before this one, and they both just failed. They just didn't work out. But then this one, I found some traction, and now I'm continuing with it. Like, I'm making sure every week there's an upload for people to listen to, regardless of it being 10 views or 50 views or 400 views, whatever. And he was like, Yeah, like later on in the conversation, he was like, yeah, it was like you said to me, like you had to fail at it twice. And he goes, now look, now you have a successful podcast. And I didn't
Yeah.
say that. He said, now you have a successful podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, it wasn't him validating me that made me feel that this is successful. It was like, oh, the fact that I want to keep doing this is what makes
Yeah.
it successful.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's like, I think defining what success is for you is really important too. Like you said, it's like, it's not about the money or the houses or all that. We all need money to live and you need
Sure.
financial security for sure. But do you get up every day and enjoy what you do? Are you looking forward to the next thing that you're doing? And I think for me, success is going to be if I don't have to have a 9 to 5 job and I just get to be creative for a living, I win. After that, everything's a bonus. Everything's a bonus. It's like I still have those moments where I'm like, holy Lord, like I just get to go to this beautiful place and people come to see you do stand up and just be yourself and you share your thoughts. And then someone gives you a check at the end of it. It's like, that's insane that that's still a thing. Like that's, and you can, because you can get into that trap of like, well, how many tickets am I selling? Or how big is the venue I'm playing? And that guy's playing a bigger venue. And how many dates did he sell out? And I only sold this many. And then of course, now you're in a comparison and that's the thief of joy, as they say. So I think you're right. Setting your own standard. And are you happy doing what you're doing? Do you feel like you're in a line with your values and who you want to be as a person? It's like, man, you won. Like you won.
Yeah.
No.
And crazy things happen that's why I love the entertainment industry, because crazy shit happens overnight.
Yeah.
Like it just happens. As long as you're continuously working towards like your own idea of what success is and people start to notice that, then opportunities will come along. And like as long as you have kept the dust off your shoulders when it comes to stand up and you can act on those moments, like it happens all the time.
I think you're right. And I think what goes hand in hand with that is continuing to do what the job is. Like I think now more than ever, you can get lost real quick in what it is. What does it mean to be a stand-up comedian? Does it mean you're supposed to be on Facebook and arguing with people about how to host or how to MC, or can you believe this person did that? I'm like, I don't understand how people have the time to go on there and then talk about how comedy's supposed to be done. And I'm like, you're just talking about the job you're supposed to be doing. Like, go write some jokes. Go write some jokes. Like, what are you doing? Like, we can get caught up in the weeds of it all because you feel like you're on a pedestal. And I'll tell people how it's supposed to go. I've never understood that. It's like, just go do the job. You don't need to tell people. Someone asks you about it. That's different if they want your advice and you're answering the question. But to just be like, I'm going to spend 3 weeks telling people how to do. I'm like, oh, no.
Writing a joke about like doing comedy, like through Facebook statuses.
Yeah. It's like, just what's the job description? Just be a comedian, like write material, go perform that material, do it again, rinse, repeat. Right. Like I don't understand the other stuff. Like I get social media is part of our world now, but I don't get the bickering and the,
it should be purely promotional though. And like, art based, like I think there can be a limit where we've gone too inside baseball. You know, like the WWF was super popular because people didn't know if it was real or if it was fake. There was people that guessed it was, and then they were like, and then the WWE was like, well, we're an entertainment company, and what we do is scripted. And then so people were like, oh, so they admitted to it, and then they started showing you behind the scenes stuff, and then people just kind of turned off from it. And then lately there's been like this re-emergence of WWE because they've partnered with the UFC and now they're back to being like bigger than ever before, really. And it's because they're offering like an even deeper like behind the scenes look at these people to show like the craftsmanship of it. But I think like with stand up, we're in the WWE era where people are learning how the sausage is made, but then I think they're getting sick of it, or like other comedians are getting sick of it. Like, can stop sharing our secrets with everyone. Like,
And then of course there's the whole crowd work thing now, right? The whole argument about like, oh, is that what stand-up is? And it's like, no, but so now you think you come to the show and just yell shit out, and it's like, no, actually, that's not. So I think you're right. I mean, I get people are looking to just get hits and they want to get likes, whereas I'm like, I don't know, I just come old school, right? I'm like, share your thoughts, man. Give me your act. I want to hear the stuff you wrote. Let's go. Like, let's do it.
But like the problem that people have with that too is they're like, oh, I'm gonna burn the material. Like, I posted a few jokes, just like stand-up clips, whatever. Have I done maybe one crowd work clip, but I posted like mostly stand-up clips. And then right away I was like, I shouldn't have done that.
Right. Because it's stuff you do. It's stuff you do currently now. Yeah.
Stuff I do currently now. But I'm also like, maybe there'll be people that'll like it. But then I'm like, but I don't like that. Like, I would much rather post like a funny sketch or a funny moment from this podcast, and then say, if you want to see the good stuff, come to the live show. You know what I mean? Like, you want to see the jokes I've practiced.
Yeah, it's the whole concept too of documenting versus content, right? It's like you're a stand-up, you have followers. It's like, hey man, I'm wherever I am today doing whatever. Like, that's cool, behind the curtain stuff. The other thing too is when you're sharing stand-up clips, it's always incentive then to just write more stuff, right? It's like you put that out there. It's like, okay, you're worried about that being burned now. It's like, okay, we'll sit down tomorrow for 2 hours and find a way to replace that. Like there's always that continuous, because that's the job. The job is always the same regardless. So I get the argument that people make, but it's like, still, it's like, we gotta, or you might have old stuff that you've never shown anybody. It's like, well, put that up, like do that one night somewhere and put that video up. You're not really doing it in your real act now. You used to do it before. Throw it up, see what happens. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a way of people are still getting a feel for who you are as a person, and let it go. But it's a wild time, man. The internet's wild west right now. It's insane.
It's going to be great to see where it goes. I'm going to share your stuff here, Trent. If people are watching on YouTube, first of all, thank you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. It always helps us out. It's trentscomedy.com. All these links are in the description below, but that's where you can go listen to the podcast, Trent 30, or you can see Trent on the road doing a comedy tour. On Instagram, it's Trent_McClellan. And again, this is all in the description below. And I'll also put the Apple and Spotify links to your podcast there as well.
Oh, thanks so much, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate you making the time.
I love talking comedy, I could do it for days and days and days. It's like you can nerd out on stand-up comedy.
I like chatting with other people about comedy too. It really like helps me think like, again, like I'm not crazy. Like other people are feeling this too. And it's nice to have like a unfiltered like hour conversation where we're not like looking at our cell phone every 20, 35 minutes. Like, it's amazing. Yeah. That's what I love most about this.
Real human connection. But I still remember that too, of like when you first walked into a comedy club and you met your people, where you're like, oh yeah, you didn't quite fit in either, right? Like, no, I didn't want to do the day thing. That's crazy. Hey, you want to hang out? Like, you want to get some wings? Like, it was just like, I'm not crazy. I found people. I just had to move to find them. That's all I had to do. Like, so there is a real community to comedy too, which is always amazing, because only comedians understand what other comedians go through. I really believe that. Or musicians understand what other musicians go through, and so on.
For sure. Well, thanks for coming on the comedy therapy hour.
Nice. I'll send you the invoice. I'll send you the bill.
Rebook
with Helen on the way out. I've got another appointment. So
chop. Thanks again, Trent. I'll send this link over to you when it's up. But I'm banking episodes, so it'll most likely be later on. But
no worries. Right, thanks for the time, man. Appreciate it. It was a great time.
Have a great rest of your night.
Cheers, you too. Bye.
You've been listening to The Johnny Rogers Show. New episodes air every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.